welcome to NaVOBA's Marching Forward Mondays podcast. The National VeteranOwned Business Association, NaVOBA, is an independent 501c3 nonprofit organization governed and led by corporate America. NaVOBA's mission is to create corporate contracting opportunities for America's veterans and service-disabled veterans business enterprises through certification, advocacy, outreach, recognition, and education. NaVOBA's Marching Forward Mondays podcast series will showcase NaVOBA's professional and business opportunities for veteran-owned businesses and corporations. I'm your host, Frank Vitale, President and CEO of Forge, a certified veteran business enterprise. I would like to thank NaVOBA's corporate allies and this episode's sponsor, American Airlines. For the first episode of NaVOBA's Marching Forward Mondays podcast, we're going to discuss the history and background of the veteran-owned business movement, key differences between public and private sector contracting, and creation of NaVOBA and its VBE certification. Joined with me today on this podcast is Matt Pavelic, President and CEO of NaVOBA. Matt, welcome.
Thank you, Frank.
Previously, Matt was NaVOBA's Vice President of Communications and the Executive Editor for VeteranOwned magazine. Matt served as an infantryman in the U.S. Army and has written extensively about the federal government's process to achieve its goal of spending 3% of contract dollars with firms owned by service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses as outlined by Public Law 106-50. Additionally, Matt has spearheaded NaVOBA's State Tracker program that has assisted and covered the passage of veteran-friendly legislation in more than 35 states across the country, as well as new programs at the local, city, and county government levels. He's been a panelist in various national conferences, including the National Veteran Small Business Conference and Expo and the Diversity Alliance for Science. Matt, how and when did the veteran-owned business movement come about?
It really began in 1989 with the Disabled Veterans Business Enterprise Program law at the state level in California. So there was a man by the name of John K. Lopez, who was largely regarded as the founding father or the godfather of the veterans business movement. He was a Korean War veteran, and he was running the Small Business Development Center in Santa Clara, California, and in the 80s. And he saw that there were all these different programs that were out there at the federal level, with the historically underutilized business program, with the 8A program and things to help as economic development programs at the state and federal government level for these other diverse business communities, and very strongly believed that veterans had earned the right to be included in a type of program, specifically because at that time, and for Korean War, this is largely regarded as a forgotten war, and for Vietnam era veterans, because they weren't forgotten about, they were actually treated in a much different fashion than the veterans have been of most recent conflicts. So now it's a social mandate that we have to support the troops, and so, which is a wonderful thing, and I think that we should support them. But that wasn't always the case. There was a lot of people after the Vietnam era that definitely did not appreciate the people that were serving that war. It was a very difficult war, costly in so many different ways, and the people that were there fighting that war definitely didn't get the same treatment that our veterans do now. And not only in terms of just public perception and public opinion, but really in terms of the benefit programs that were available to them. There was nothing like the post 9/11 GI Bill that veterans get now. The Servicemen's Readjustment Act had meager benefits compared to what is available to folks now. And so there are a whole bunch of different things that were happening, that are happening now that didn't happen for veterans. And John wanted to see that change specifically to have veterans given the opportunity to compete for federal business and see these type of requirements. And so it began there at California in '89, and then it took about a decade, and Congressman Jim Talent from Ohio was this legislative sponsor, and there's an organization called VetForce, it's the Veterans Entrepreneurship Task Force, that led to the passage of the federal law in 1999, which you mentioned. That's Public Law 106-50, and that sets the 3% threshold to where the government has to spend at least 3% of not only prime contract awards, but also subcontract dollars with service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses. So that kind of ushered in veteran businesses as a diverse business class on the national level, and that was in 1999. And the federal government didn't actually achieve that 3% threshold until 2014. But it was in 2003 that the publishers of what would become VeteranOwned magazine were at a national business conference, and they saw all the efforts that were happening in the corporate sector or private America, the private sector or corporate America for diverse-owned businesses. And they said there should be something like this for veteran-owned businesses because there's a federal law, and in the public sector, there's opportunities for diverse-owned businesses. So why shouldn't the veterans have this in the private sector as well? So the idea to launch something to kind of advocate for that was born in the form of Veterans Business Journal. And in 2007, it was rebranded as VeteranOwned. And that's when NaVOBA was officially launched as an advocacy organization for the business owners that wanted to become members, get a subscription to the magazine. There's all kinds of different ways. We had identifiers to help them promote that their company was a veteran-owned business. And really did start to target the private sector in that way for what we now call our corporate allies. But at that time in 2007, there were only about 98 companies on the Fortune 500 that had programs that had anything to do with veterans in their supplier diversity statements, or specifically targeted veteran-owned companies as diverse vendors. And so over the last several years, we've seen that change. And so now we have just about more than 480 of the Fortune 500 companies have included veterans.
What do you think is one of the main reasons that we've seen an increase in engagement with veteran-owned businesses?
Well, I think the veterans understand that there's an advantage to being a veteran now. So we did survey research that found that 95% of consumers or Americans are grateful to the men and women that have served in the military, and 2/3 of consumers said they'd be inclined to purchase from a business that's identified as veteran-owned if all things are being equal. And so not only does that from a consumer perspective, but also corporations understand that their customers are very diverse. And in this case, their customers are veterans and people who are supportive of veterans, their family members of veterans, et cetera. So should their suppliers be diverse and be veterans as well. So there's a lot of advantage from a business perspective. But I think one of the other things that goes often unnoticed is veterans tend to make excellent entrepreneurs. There's a lot of research that proves that veterans are much more successful long-term at keeping their businesses successful and not failing at those businesses and turning those ideas into profitable enterprises over time. There's a lot of research that's tried to understand that phenomenon, that why do veterans make better business owners than non-veterans? I think that some of it can be explained away by the fact that 75% of the population isn't eligible to serve because they can't pass the drug screening, the background test, the ASVAB scores aren't high enough. There's a whole bunch of reasons, but right off the bat, only 25% of the people that would like to serve can do so. And for the last 45 and a half years, the folks that have served have done so as volunteers. And I think people willingly making that sacrifice to put themselves into harm's way for something greater than themselves, that attitude, that mindset, I think, plays a big factor into what makes people successful as entrepreneurs. And then you take in the fact that all of the training that you get, the responsibility, the leadership, and all of the intangible attributes that you acquire during military service, they also translate very well to success in the private sector, whether you're an employee or an entrepreneur.
Matt, you clearly are passionate about what you do and your service. And as I said in your introduction, you're a former infantryman in the Army. But maybe you could shed a little bit of light on, how did you become involved with the veteran-owned business movement?
So I started working when I was in graduate school. I was in a journalism program, and I started working for what was GI Jobs magazine. So one of the photojournalism professors in the graduate program in Pittsburgh was the house photographer for GI Jobs. And that magazine was really geared to help veterans find post-military careers in jobs with companies that wanted to hire veterans. And so one of the editor from the magazine asked, he said, "Hey, you teach at this university. Do you know anybody that can actually write some articles for us? Because they're always looking for freelance writers." And so I met with John Dowling, who was the editor of the magazine at the time. He and I went and had lunch, and he gave me a job after that meeting to write an article about job opportunities for veterans in the corrections industry. And that was in December of 2006. And then not long after, I was hired full-time as an assistant editor with that publication. And then it was in 2009 that they offered me the job to run VeteranOwned magazine specifically. And so I didn't really know a lot about running a business. I certainly didn't know anything about editing a business publication. So I went and spent a great deal of time over the next 6 months going to the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, Small Business Development Center, the VA's program, everything that I could find to help understand what was out there. And it dawned on me that I didn't have to know everything about running a business. I just needed to help find the opportunities that are out there for veterans to be able to leverage the fact that their business is veteran owned, what resources were out there, and how to share that message with their customers to help their business grow. And talking to thousands of veteran businesses over the years and interviewing them helped me really gain a grasp for what's out there. And I think it really does help because you hear what helps them become successful and what their pain points are. And that really helps inform what we need to do with NaVOBA to help these businesses be successful.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, clearly this is something that is near and dear to your heart. And that's why you're good at it. Quite frankly, you and I know each other, and I'm familiar with, how hard you work at helping VBEs, but also aligning with the mission of corporate America. And so I've witnessed firsthand how much this means to you. Tell me sort of an experience that you've had where you really feel like NaVOBA has made a difference, with a VBE in particular.
Well, one of the things that I think was most pivotal is a friend of mine who tragically passed away not long ago. His name was Mark Cascio. He owned a company called Sabre Construction down in Nashville. And he and I had worked together closely. He was our advocate trying to get the state to pass a law. So one of the programs that was really successful that we just really started to reinvest in was our state tracker program to get any state that's going to have any program for any group of businesses, for whatever reason, they should have something for veterans. They should be equally included. And so we were very successful at getting those states to pass those. And so we went down to, not only did we get the state of Tennessee, but also the city of Nashville to pass the program. And Mark and I worked together very closely with the governor's office. And I went down to meet with Mark with the governor to do a photo shoot for the cover of the magazine, because, Tennessee was the newest veteran-friendly state, and it was really positive experience. And then Mark's company ended up doing really well, getting contracts not only with the state of Tennessee, but also with the city of Nashville. And he also was working with other of our corporate partners as well to expand his business and continue to grow his business. And it was maybe he even branched out into getting into franchising. He owned, I think, 7 different Anytime Fitness franchises, and we were able to write a recommendation letter and help him position himself to get in the franchise concept there, because franchisors are another area that really want to target veterans as franchisees to work for them for all the same reasons, because they make excellent franchisees. And so we were really able to help see Mark specifically work together to see real positive change for veterans at the state and national or local level with those pieces of legislation, but also him on a personal level to grow his business. And the people he had, almost half of the folks that worked for him at all of his companies were veterans. So he had a great positive impact on the veteran community where he lived and worked. And that's just one story of many different stories like that. And so unfortunately, Mark wasn't able to, he had a long battle with skin cancer and passed away, but it was a very positive thing to see that. And he was able to turn a business over to his sons, and both, one of them was an Army vet as well. So anyway, it's very powerful to see the positive impact that this has and some of the people that are benefiting from this.
Yeah. Well, and imagine, that your friend was able to make a difference as well. And, you and he together. So I think that's incredible. Let's talk a little bit about, why is it important for the veteran business enterprise to not, we hear a lot about engaging in federal contracting, but why is it important to have this relationship with corporate America?
Well, opportunity is the most simple answer. So the federal marketplace is nothing to sneeze at. It's the world's largest customer, if you look at the federal government, in terms of a single buyer. So there's 26 federal agencies that have procurement budgets in excess of $500 million each. And if 3% of what they spend is mandated by law to go to service-disabled vets every year, that's easily over $15 billion. So there's nothing to sneeze at there, and there's a huge opportunity. But it seems to me that every veteran who thinks about entrepreneurship, and if you hear a vet that takes the terms veteran and own business together, and those two components of self-identity are linked in that way, it's almost a guarantee they're trying to compete for federal government business. I don't know where it happens. When I transitioned out of the military, they didn't tell me anything about this, but somehow over the last 20 years, people have been saying, if you hang a shingle and say that you're a veteran-owned business, the government owes you $1 million contract. And so people are trying to do that. And there are people that have been very successful and have made a lot of money, and they're doing well for themselves. The federal government, just in fiscal year 2014, was the first time they actually achieved the 3% threshold, and it's kind of improved since then. So there's a lot of folks that are doing well for themselves and making good money, but at the same time, it's a very challenging marketplace to get into. To be a company that's of the level of sophistication to actually be able to sell to the federal government agency, you need to be a really successful business. And starting as a startup or trying to get your foot in the door without the past performance and all the requirements that are there to sell to the federal government is an incredibly challenging effort to do. So, and the program at the federal government level is only for service-disabled veteran businesses. So if you're a veterans business enterprise that has not incurred a disability, there's no mandate or requirement for the government to buy anything from you. So, which is not necessarily the case in the private sector. The corporations aren't necessarily looking at this as a compliance thing, that they have a federal law that they have to adhere to and hire these veteran companies to buy stuff from them to be complicit with regulations. They understand that this impacts their bottom line in a very positive way. This helps a positive impact on shareholder value, which is king in the private sector. And so in having a diverse supply chain that's inclusive of people that are their customers, and also the fact that veterans make excellent business owners, is something that's a much more lucrative opportunity. And speaking of that as opportunity, that $15 billion, if 3%, that direct equivalent of what's outsourced by corporate America, that's right, well over $90 billion every year, because there's way more companies on the Fortune 500, multinational companies that are massive in scale. So there's so much more opportunity, and there's a lot fewer barriers to entry. And if you can build a relationship, and the government doesn't necessarily buy what it doesn't buy, right? So if you have something that's innovative, that's going to be a game changer, that can actually be a value to companies as they start to pivot and move in a different direction. We just had a session earlier today hearing about how the energy industry is going to be changing. So how companies can come in. If you say, hey, I have this wonderful idea that's going to help solve one of your problems or provide real solutions to you right now, they could do that. The government say, well, in 3 years, when we forecast what we may buy, we could possibly consider doing something like this, but for the time being, we're not going to do that. So there's so many different factors that make the private sector probably superior just for every business that's out there, but even in addition to. So even if you say, well, I'd never really thought about that, I'm always set up to sell to the government, you should at least consider branching out and casting a wider net into the private sector.
Well, that's for no other reason than diversity, right? So business diversity. Well, Matt, I know that you do great work, but you work with a team. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to be introducing and welcoming a few of the members of your team here shortly. So I hope that you'll join me, and we'd like to get to know what they do as well. And if there's anything that you could add to that, we certainly welcome you to do that. So as soon as we get them on board here, we'll ask them a few questions. But while our producer is bringing them on, Matt, I will say that as a VBE myself with Forge Business Solutions, we really enjoy and appreciate our relationship with NaVOBA. So thank you for what you all do, and I can tell you, you represent a first-class operation.
Well, thank you, Frank. And we can reciprocate that, because it was great having you help us to facilitate our strategic planning session earlier this year. Obviously, the things that we planned to accomplish in January changed dramatically with what happened globally, but still, that was a great session that we had, and your leadership was really wonderful to help put us on a positive path for that. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm honored, quite frankly, to be a veteran business enterprise, certified veteran business enterprise, but also honored to work with you. And I see Heather's joined us, Heather Herndon, and we welcome you. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
Well, great. Heather is with Vistra Corporation, and she's the director, supply chain diversity. So she has a big job. And Heather, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and also the role you play with NaVOBA?
Okay. Well, I am blessed and honored to lead the supply chain diversity effort at Vistra Corporation, where I really work strategically to identify opportunities for our minority, women, veteran, LGBTQ, and disabled-owned businesses. And so I've worked with Matt and Mimi, and with the team, Nancy and all the original group since I guess about 2015, right, Matt? We started putting NaVOBA together, and I currently serve as chair of the board of NaVOBA.
Great. Well, that's an important role, and you have quite an esteemed board. Will you tell us a little bit about sort of how the board got formed, and maybe just in general the demographics, the industries that your board represents?
Well, we were very deliberate in building our board. So we did try to get a diversification of companies, of industries on the board of directors, try to have executive level individuals on it that are true decision makers within their companies, and that bring areas of expertise to the board as well, so that we have a really well-run, well-rounded board of directors. It's currently comprised, in the way our bylaws are set up, that 2/3 of it are corporate members. And then 1/6 are other partner organizations that we can work with in the veteran community, and 1/6 are veteran business enterprises themselves. So we try to get each one of our constituencies in a leading role. It's very much a working board. We have active committees that are putting together marketing efforts, putting together certification standards and procedures, making sure we're on top of that, particularly with the whole pandemic situation, being able to really pivot and move toward a technology-based solution for site visits and things of that nature. So we've got a very good and active board that's very engaged. Every single one of our board members is active with the committee.
Well, that's great. That's great. We're going to come back to you. I'd like to take the opportunity to also introduce Mimi Loam. She is NaVOBA's Vice President for Corporate Relations and Chief Development Officer. Mimi, welcome.
Thank you, Frank. Sorry about the whole video thing, but I don't have a webcam, so I'm on my laptop, so I feel like I'm staring in the air.
That's okay. That's okay. Welcome. Tell us, Mimi, a little bit about what you do and how you got connected with NaVOBA.
So I came to NaVOBA in 2007 with a sales background, a very diverse sales background. And when they recruited me to come into the office, they had asked me to work for GI Jobs magazine, which was recruitment. And that was my background within real estate and sales, placement, staffing. And I came in, and of course it was an inside sales job at first. And when I started working with them, I said I really needed something more business development, relationship building, as opposed to more inside sales. And so we started NaVOBA. I started as an advocate, reaching out to the different government agencies at first, as well as corporations. But the government agencies is where we actually really brought in the clients. So they were doing a lot of advertising, wanting to reach their spend goals. And when we were attending WeBank and NMSDC, all the different organizations, we really thought there's an opportunity that we're missing. And so we started reaching out to the corporations. And then, of course, the government had to stop a freeze of spending. And I was working with different folks like Scott Deniston from the VA, Murray Schooner, and both of them were really mentoring me and teaching me about diversity within the corporations. And that's really how it got started. And the whole advocacy in reaching out to all these different corporations was really enhanced by a conversation I had with Linda Denny, who was a former president of WeBank, and she was encouraging me at the time that we should think about certification, and that was as early as 2009.
Yeah,
that's how long it's been that we were considering, but the opportunity for us was not necessarily, at that point, was not something that we were focused on, considering the VA was doing their verification program, which was much different than it is today.
Yeah,
kind of how we got started.
That's great. That's great. I know that you're a valued member of the team, and you and I first met. That's how I was introduced to NaVOBA. So great. Appreciate all you've done for me as well. I'd like to recognize someone who's also joining us, and that's Nancy Connor, and she's NaVOBA's Certification Director. Nancy, welcome.
Hey, thank you, Frank. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I'm trying to get this video going, but I'm not having any luck today, so sorry about that.
No problem at all. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do as the certification director and how you got connected with NaVOBA?
Okay. Oh, well, connected with NaVOBA, that's a long story. I've known Mimi and Heather for many, many years, long before NaVOBA was even a concept, probably. But we go pretty far back, and primarily because of my a pretty long experience with certification within another national organization. So when NaVOBA was launching, they asked for my help with developing the certification standards so that we could model our processes after the world-class programs of WeBank and other nationally recognized organizations. So the role that I play within NaVOBA is I am the certification director, and I work with all of our incoming veteran applications. We work to get those applications reviewed thoroughly and conduct on-site interviews with all of our applicants so that we are certain that everyone that we are certifying is truly owned, controlled, and operated by a veteran. That's very, very important to our corporate allies.
Yeah. Well, you do a wonderful job, and you're very understanding and working with the VBEs. So I know you're where the rubber meets the road when it comes to initial engagement with the VBEs. So I'm sure I know your work is meaningful to you, and we're going to come back and talk with you a little bit about sort of what that process looks like. Heather, I'd like to go back to you for a moment. You represent a corporation, a partner, and I know that you're passionate about working with veteran business enterprises. And so, if you could tell us, why does your corporation prefer a third-party certification when it comes to working with groups like this?
So we are very adamant that we want to have true 51% or more ownership, control, and operations by the veteran or veterans, a group of veterans. And we kind of refer to what we talk about as the red face test. We don't want to wind up on the front page of the Dallas Morning News or New York Times because we said we spent X number of dollars with a veteran-owned business and it wasn't truly a veteran business enterprise. So that's the primary reason we wanted a third-party certification. We also require it for our other categories as well. And we actually use the database as a sourcing tool. So all of our supply chain professionals within our supply chain organizations will go to the NaVOBA database to identify veteran businesses for any competitive solicitation we have that's in excess of $150,000. So it's a great sourcing tool. It's a great opportunity for our supply chain professionals to meet veteran business enterprises through our Marching Forward Monday capabilities presentations that they do, or the other events that hopefully that we're back in person with. So it's been just a tremendous tool for us from a networking and connecting standpoint, as well as making sure that we're really doing business with a verifiable veteran business enterprise.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And, Matt, I want to bring you back in. You mentioned earlier about how veterans, are treated and all the, the great value that veteran entrepreneurs bring to the table. So, Matt, could you talk a little bit about, when you, engage a corporation, what do you do? What does your team do to make sure that corporation embodies the very characteristics that would be of value also to the VBE?
Well, the thing that we really try to impress upon any organization is if you're doing anything for any group of individuals for any reason whatsoever, veterans have earned the right to be equally included through their service. And so it's something that resonates really well. I think that and we very much want to take the business case approach to this. There's a whole lot of value that corporations get out of supplier diversity, generally speaking, but also including veterans in their supply chain, because veterans make great business owners, veterans make great suppliers. And one of the things that we try to impress upon the veteran businesses is if you're going to go into these organizations and become a supplier of these companies and you're putting your veteran-owned status on your sleeve, that's much more motivation for you to perform and overperform and exceed the expectations of that customer, because you can give your whole community a bad name if you underperform or you don't do things in a very ethical way. And so making sure that these folks are who they say they are. The corporations are inclusive of veterans, and making sure that both sides of the equation are working very hard to keep everything as profitable and beneficial as possible is something that we really wanted to achieve with this.
No, that's great. That's great. And I think that's sort of, the role that NaVOBA plays is to be that safeguard for both the corporate partners and the VBE. And I know that you play that role well. Nancy, talk to us a little bit about the process. What is the process to become a certified, service disabled, VBE or just a veteran business enterprise in and of itself? Can you talk us through that?
Well, sure. We're very deliberate in the way we organize and set up our application process. We had the advantage of being able to start from a very highly technological point of view, as opposed to we weren't encumbered by a lot of old processes or paper documents. We started our NaVOBA certification process completely electronically from the very beginning. So the process is all done online through our website. We start with one of two verifications of veteran status, which is called the ID Me. It's one of the ways that we help eliminate any confusion right off the bat. If a person is not verified to actually have veteran status, they don't continue to apply to our program because we can't certify them if they're really not a veteran. So we get that out of the way right off the bat. We answer all the questions on the application electronically. We collect the payment for the processing fee electronically, and then we communicate through a secure email websites to collect the required documentation from each applicant. Now, those applicants have different requirements based on the type of company they are. So if they're a LLC or they're a corporation or they're a sole proprietor, there's a different list of required documents which we need to take a look at, all of which we review in totality that application so that we can be confident that that business is owned, controlled, and operated by a veteran and nobody else. That's the assurance that our corporate allies trust us for, and that's what we work hard to confirm. One of the very final steps and one of the ways that sets our certification apart from some others is that we conduct a face-to-face on-site interview where we validate, again, a third way, all of the information we read in the application, and we don't see any discrepancies again. That process is pretty efficient, as I said in the beginning. And one of the questions that we often get is, well, I already have government certification. Why do I need this one? And I'd like to address that as well, as if I can.
Yes, please. What's the difference?
Yeah, the government certification is meant to identify companies who qualify as small disadvantaged business, say that again. The government process is meant to validate that a veteran-owned business is a small business. Their acronym is VOSB, Veteran-Owned Small Business, or SDVOSB, which is a Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business. Being small is important to the government. Being small is irrelevant to NaVOBA. We have corporations who appreciate larger veteran-owned businesses who have capacity and can do work for them across their national footprint. So bigger is fine for NaVOBA, and that's one key differentiator from the government certification. We feel that our process is efficient and very streamlined, and we get great feedback from our applicants that say, wow, that wasn't so bad. And I'll add one more thing that's really important to note. So if you happen to be a CVE verified company, coming to NaVOBA for our certification is going to be much quicker for you because we can streamline our application process, and we don't need to see quite as many documents from you as we would if you were a brand new applicant to us. So please come to NaVOBA if you're CBE verified. We can help you get access to corporate opportunities. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Sure, sure. Is there a cost, Nancy?
There is. There's a small administrative fee that needs to be paid to, which really supports our activity to certify and our website and database. So there's a small fee. It's based on your annual revenue. So the initial fee for companies with $1 million or below in revenue is $350, and that certification is good for 2 years. So the cost goes up on a sliding scale from there, but it's never any greater than $2,000, which would be for a company which is $50 million a year or greater in revenue. So we try to take into consideration corporate, small business, the veterans' revenues, and we charge our fees accordingly.
Well, I can tell you that I'm sure that's appreciated, particularly from smaller businesses who want to affiliate, but you know, every dollar counts. So I think that's I appreciate the fact that you do have that sliding scale. So Mimi, you're out there in the field and you're talking with VBEs and large corporations. I mean, what are those conversations like when you, let's say, go to a corporation to talk about being a partner?
Well, the conversations are getting better and better. We've implemented several programs, one of them being this MFM, and they're discovering value, and the corporations are more open-minded now that we have a certification, because the conversations in the beginning were, well, we require our women and our minorities to get certified. We'd really like to have the veterans certified. And a few of the corporations were using the VA verification. But then once we had the talks about the certification, we had more and more corporations that were interested. And as of today, our organization is really growing quickly because of the certification and the value that NaVOBA provides. And also, we are very advanced with our certification, being that we're doing everything online. So they really do think that there is a difference from the other certifying bodies as compared to ours, because we offer everything online. We have a 30-day, Nancy, if I'm correct, under 30 days certification, provided that everybody is giving their documentation up front, all their documents up front. So I think we have shown some value, and then we are really bringing some great businesses to our corporations. And now with the up and coming new technology, I think we'll really be the leaders in this spot.
You mentioned MFM. Could you talk to us a little bit about that, and so folks know what that means?
Sure. Our Marching Forward Mondays is a 3-segmented program. So our first segment is the VBE's showcase. So we bring on 3 to 5 of our certified businesses to do anywhere from a 3 to 5 minute pitch on their business to an audience of corporations. So we invite numerous corporations, over 500 corporations are invited. Our general audience is somewhere about 130, maybe less. And we let them present their businesses. And then at the end of the presentation, there is a question and answer session. Our second segment is the MFM corporate engagement, where we will bring on 2 to 3 corporations to do their pitch and really talk about how to make your business stand out, or what they're looking for, what type of insurance you might need, really to give you the how-to and in-depth information that you don't get off of their website. And we've seen some really good results from both of those segments. And then, of course, this is our third segment, which is the podcast. And so this will happen once a month. The VBE segment happens twice a month, and our corporate is once a month. But this podcast also is going to talk about different topics and a variety of different things that we can provide value for to our veteran businesses.
All right, I want to come back to the chair of our board, Heather. And so Mimi mentioned structure. So could you tell us a little bit about, the NaVOBA structure and, why that's important to you?
Yeah, I think that was kind of what I referred to earlier with the board of directors being 2/3 corporate. We really want to be sure that we have the corporate buy-in and the corporate governance and oversight so that our VBEs are getting the best possible introduction into the businesses the corporations they want to do business with as allies and advocates. Most of us have very strong veteran business support programs. We really do have from the CEO level down that are very supportive and very grateful to our veterans for what they've done. So we're trying to take that and really develop the relationships inside our companies for them. The direct decision maker, not only supply chain, but the end user business owner as well. And the structure of the company the organization having both corporate leadership, but then also having the VBEs serve on that board of directors is critical to try to identify ways to best include that engagement. And another unique thing for us, rather than having like the other organizations that have regional organizations, there are so many great veteran business development organizations out there already. So what we've done is we've included 1/6 of our board seats for those other partner organizations so that we're really very collaborative. We don't want to compete. There's enough business out there to go around. We really want to make sure that we take the most influence and input that we can from the other partner veteran business development organizations and help grow our VBEs, help our corporations grow their veteran business outreach initiatives, help our VBEs grow their businesses and help bring all of that together. So we really do feel like the corporate structure or the governance structure that we have with corporation VBEs and partner organizations reflects that intent to try to maximize the opportunities for our VBEs.
So if I understand, and you've done a great job eloquently explaining the board and the composition that is in your bylaws, I believe, that dictates that structure. But membership wide, the breadth of the corporate partners and the various industries that are represented. Can you talk a little bit about how that is a strength?
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's diversification, right? Anything that's diversified is stronger.
That's right.
We have diversity of industry. We have diversity of expertise. Like I said on the board, we've got the transportation industry, the utility industry, the food and beverage industry, the energy industry and oil and gas side. We have the financial industry, several banks that are part of this as well. And just really anything that's out there, we've got representation either at the board level or certainly as corporate allies. So depending on what the VBE product or service offering is, one of the things we like to say at Vistra, we're an electric utility. I may not buy red high-heeled shoes, but let me know about your business. I probably know somebody who does. And we're able to share those suppliers and share those relationships. I think in the world of supply chain diversity, it's a very small world. We know each other. We really want to share our suppliers. We refer to R&D, rip off and duplicate, no reason to reinvent the wheel. What's already out there and make it better. So the group of organizations that are corporate allies for NaVOBA have worked together in many other organizations as well. Just a good breadth and depth of understanding of value of the Supplier Diversity Initiative and how we can bring veterans into it through an organization like NaVOBA. Yeah,
no, that's great. And I think that's the network, right? The value of the network itself. And I know certainly that's attractive to me as a VBE. Matt, what do you think? You told us about the history of NaVOBA. Tell us a little bit about what you think the future is.
Well, I think that there's going to continue to be growth, not only in terms of the corporations that are going to be inclusive of veteran businesses. I think that a lot of the things that have been happening over the last year have definitely expanded the prominence of diversity, generally speaking, of supplier diversity being part of that within the corporate world. And since veterans are a crucial part of the diversity community, with NaVOBA as a member of the National Business Inclusion Consortium, which I think that's just going to help elevate all diverse suppliers, which is going to help elevate veteran suppliers. So I think that there's going to be more corporate buy-in, and I definitely think that we're going to see more and more veterans understanding the benefit of certification. It's relatively new. What we're doing, we'll celebrate our 3rd year officially in November of this year. So we haven't had the benefit of the same amount of time as these other diverse business communities have had to be able to get the prominence that's out there. We definitely what Mimi mentioned, having the technology available with a sourcing tool that businesses can actually be found, corporations that want to buy from veteran companies can find them within that NaVOBA database. And we have our certified veteran-owned logo that we have products that are going to be on store shelves that people can see that they're actually being provided by veteran-owned suppliers to these companies. So as we normalize the behavior of saying, hey, you're a veteran, people like that. But in order to make sure that we can take advantage of that, it's only the veterans that have earned it through their service that get to do this. So we need to normalize that behavior of certification. And as the veteran community starts to understand that, we start to demand that of each other, by the way. So if we're going to be, and we should be, veterans should be buying from veterans every chance that we get. NaVOBA tries to believe in that. So anytime we buy anything, we try to buy from veterans first, specifically within our network. But we also want to make sure that they are who they say they are, that they're actually veterans. So we all demand that if we're going to buy something from a company based on who the owner is, we should trust that they're certified and ask them if they're certified. And so as we can normalize that behavior, I think it's really going to elevate the veteran business community in a couple of different ways, because it'll make more of us raise our hands and say that we're veteran-owned companies, but also it'll deter those bad actors that really haven't earned it, because unfortunately there are people, if there's an advantage to doing something, people try to take that advantage whether they've earned it or not. So I think this will kind of steer that away. So all signs indicate that this is going to be just a moving train that is starting to gain a lot more momentum. And it's like I said before, veteran-owned companies hire veterans as employees at a much greater rate. So everything that we're doing is only going to help the veterans community in terms of entrepreneurship and employment and economic prosperity. And all of these folks that have volunteered to serve our country to keep this American dream alive certainly deserve every chance that we can to help promote that opportunity for them.
Right. No, that's great news. Mimi, if I'm in charge and responsible for supply chain diversity for my corporation, how do I find out about being a corporate partner, and where do I find you?
Oh, wonderful. Well, most of the time I'm reaching out to the organizations, but if I have not reached out to you, you can feel free to come to us at NaVOBA.org/corporate allies. And then if you send us an email, we'll be more than happy to get back to you and set up a one-on-one call and get you out our information.
That's great.
Or you can find us when life gets back to normal at many of these small business conferences.
That sounds welcoming. I'm looking forward to that opportunity. Nancy, I want to bring you back in with respect to, if I'm a small business and I might be intimidated by the process of becoming certified. Is there some place that I can find you and find out what sorts of information you're going to need so I can make that decision?
Oh, absolutely. Most of our information is available at NaVOBA.org/certification, but we also are available for any kind of coaching calls or question and answer before you even start the process, because some folks just really like to have that personal touch. We're always available to have those conversations. And I'd like to highlight, one of the things that I failed to mention was that not only do we provide corporations with the confidence that the suppliers that we've certified are in fact owned, controlled, and operated, we've gone further by trademarking our VBE and SDVBE designations. So no one can use those unless they've gone through our process. So we're real proud of that, and I think that was great foresight on the part of our leadership from the very beginning. So if anyone has questions, my direct email is nancy.connor@navoba.org. Happy to schedule a call to go through any questions anyone might have about getting certified.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Heather, I'm going to ask you for any last words as our time is beginning to wrap up, and any thoughts you'd like to let us know and share with us?
Well, I'd like to thank all the veterans out there for their service. It really is very special to me personally, as well as to our corporations. And so we thank you for your service. We really do want to give you every advantage that we can on getting you into our corporation. So please go through the certification process so we can find you. So we can find you in our sourcing tool. We can get you engaged and introduced to the decision makers within our businesses and help you grow your business.
Thank you. Thank you. Matt, how about you?
Well, the one thing I would like to say to all the veteran businesses out there, well, thank you for your service for sure. I know there's a lot of folks that have really paid a pretty steep price to serve our country, and everybody, no matter what their service was like, it's a sacrifice. And so thank you for that. For the veteran businesses that are out there, just a word of wisdom: no one's going to buy anything from you because you're a veteran. People are very grateful for your service, and there's a lot of advantage to that. But we're talking about companies that are in business to turn a profit, just like yours should be in business to turn a profit. You wouldn't buy anything that wasn't worth buying simply because the person that's selling it to you. So don't expect that of your customers. And so always emphasize the fact that you provide value, you solve problems, and you're going to help impact their shareholder value in a positive way. Oh, and we're also a certified veteran. It always has to be something that's a value add, not the reason they're going to buy from you in the first place.
Well, thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. Appreciate you being with us today, and you have a wonderful team. Mimi, let me ask you, you mentioned future podcasts. We look forward to those episodes. What should our listeners anticipate? Any topics you could share with us?
Looking for the next few months to talk about women-owned businesses that are veterans, as well as our LGBT community of small LGBT veteran businesses. So those are a few topics that we have already on the horizon. And if you come to our website, you can see the events page. If you click on the events page, we'll have all the topics. You can also come to the events page to find the VBE showcase, the MFM corporate engagement. All the dates should be there for the next 30 days. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me as well, mimi.lohm, LOHM, @NaVOBA.org for any information in regards to our MFM. And I also want to just thank all of our veterans and our corporations that are making all this happen. Our chairperson, Heather, and Nancy, our wonderful certification director, as well as Cheryl, that is really the person behind the scenes for our certification. And of course, Matt, for making this all happen. And you, Frank, for having us and creating this program for us.
It truly is a pleasure and an honor to know you and work with each of you. It's a wonderful organization. It's meant a great deal to not only our customers that we're certified, but also to our employees. They're very proud of being affiliated with NaVOBA, whether they're a veteran or not. They're proud of that certification. It's an achievement. And to my friend Nancy, it's not an easy achievement. So you've got to go through the application process. You're vetted, and it makes it all the more of an accomplishment when that certification comes through. So really appreciate that. Well, folks, that's all we have time for on this episode of NaVOBA's Marching Forward Monday podcast. I appreciate the panelists joining me today. So special thanks to each of you. And I want to thank NaVOBA's corporate allies and this episode's sponsor, American Airlines. To learn more about NaVOBA, please visit their website. You've heard it a few times, but I'll repeat it again, NaVOBA.org. Well, thank you all. Today, I'm your host. Thanks for tuning in to NaVOBA's Marching Forward Mondays podcast. Appreciate it.